The Trumpet Daily is presented by Stephen Fleury. The program analyzes world news and history from a distinct perspective and compares current events to prophecies found in the Bible. The program also offers free educational publications, including the Trumpet News Magazine and books and booklets. The Trumpet Daily is produced at the Philadelphia Church of God's home campus in Edmond, Oklahoma, and its sister campus in Edstone, England. More information is available at thetrumpet.com.
The Trumpet Daily program begins right now.
Today's world news, what it means, where it's taking us.
I bring you the one and only possible message of world peace.
This is a message of hope, tremendous hope. And he said unto me, you must prophesy again.
The Trumpet Daily program begins right now.
The sensational scenes as Mr. Churchill makes his fighting speech to the United States Congress. Tumultuous applause punctuating every magnetic sentence of the Prime Minister's brilliant oration.
It is the duty of those who are charged with the direction of the war to overcome at the earliest moment the military, geographical, and political difficulties and begin the process so necessary and desirable of laying the cities and other munition centers of Japan in ashes, for in ashes they must surely lie before peace comes back to the world. I do not intend to be responsible for any suggestion that the war is won or that it will soon be over. That it will be won by us, I am sure. But how and when cannot be foreseen, still less foretold. By singleness of purpose, by steadfastness of conduct, by tenacity and endurance, such as we have so far displayed, by these, and only by these, can we discharge our duty to the future of the world and to the destiny of man.
Spain has been very, very uncooperative, and so has UK. Now the second one is shocking, but this is not the age of Churchill. I will say the UK has been very, very uncooperative. And I'm not, by the way, I'm not happy with the UK either. That island that you read about, the lease, okay, he made it, for whatever reason, he made a lease of the island. Somebody came and took it away from him. And it's taken 3-4 days for us to work out where we can land there. It would have been much more convenient landing there as opposed to flying many extra hours. So we are very surprised. This is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with.
On April the 4th, an epoch in British history ended with the resignation of Sir Winston Churchill as Prime Minister. That morning, crowds gathered in Downing Street to try to catch a glimpse of the great Englishman. For the last time, the cabinet is summoned by the man who had led us to victory in the war. Colleagues he had inspired in office came to take their farewells. Some had not been born when he first entered Parliament. Many were in swaddling clothes when he first became a cabinet minister. The crowd watches the ministers leave, sad-faced at the parting. It is 15 years since Sir Winston first came to number 10. Now he relinquishes the role of Her Majesty's First Minister. With the characteristic cigar clutched in his hand, the evergreen man of 80 years and 4 months sets out to tender his resignation to the young Queen. The man who in 1940 had said that he had nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears and sweat. has paid his part of the bargain in full.
This is not the age of Churchill. You heard it there in the middle of that cold open from President Trump. So many takeaways when you just consider those clips. I mean, the Churchillian leadership to begin with. Japan in ashes. And then Churchill saying, I don't intend to be responsible for any suggestion that the war is won or that it will soon be over. I mean, he just spoke the truth. Even when it was unpopular. He stood on principle. I mean, that's unusual in leadership. And you rarely see it today. Everything's politically driven. Everything's influenced by politics and elections. The age of Churchill is over. I mean, another thing you take away from that cold open is just the brotherhood alliance between Ephraim and Manasseh. The United States, Great Britain, fighting together. Not so today, but back then, I mean, an alliance that was unbreakable. Well, I guess it turns out it was breakable, just given a little more time. And then what about the media coverage? You heard the commentators there talking about Churchill's brilliance, his magnetic personality, this great Englishman. Try to imagine yourself hearing that from, Joe Scarborough or someone like that today. It just wouldn't happen. A lot to get to on today's show. You're listening to Stephen Flurry, and this is the Trumpet Daily. We appreciate you joining us again for the show. You can get to the live video stream of this program at our website, thetrumpet.com, or at the Rumble channel. I've got both feeds up actually on my computer, but also YouTube. You could have it on 3 feeds if you like. You can also get to the show after the fact if you'd like to listen or view on demand. You heard what President Trump said there in the middle of that cold open. Melanie Phillips has an article today, Why the Nation of Churchill is No More. It's gone. It doesn't exist. So, as we've been trying to point out this past week on the show, it's important to step back and look at the bigger picture here. President Trump should be congratulated for standing up to Iran. But then look at the trouble that America is now in. Look at the latest issue of the Trumpet magazine. The whole world aligning against America. Tomorrow's news today, I'll get to that in just a second. But just first, with respect to, and we'll come to Melanie Phillips's piece a little later on in the show, but as far as the Churchillian leadership, I mean, he obviously was a wartime leader the first time he was prime minister. A wartime, that's what he's known for. This is what so many, historians have written books about. You heard the commentator there, the man who led us to victory. That's a news commentator from the 1940s, the 1950s. Well, if he's commenting on Churchill's resignation, it would have been, I guess, in the 50s. So even in the 50s, commentators identified the man, a single man, who led the West to victory, victory against tyranny. And this was a man who was an incredible communicator, known for his speeches, his writing, prolific in what he produced. How many books he wrote, how many articles he wrote. And a man who also stood on principle. This quote from Martin Gilbert's biography on Churchill. It was when Churchill stood against, giving India independence too soon. This was unpopular at the time. This was in the late 1920s. And Gilbert says, it was to this most difficult task that Churchill intended to devote himself. Isolated from all his former cabinet colleagues, rejected by a definite majority within the Conservative Party. Only the strength of Churchill's convictions drove him forward and sustained him in his much derided course. Nor did he have any doubts that his chosen course could only weaken still further his political position and possibly destroy altogether his chance of future political office. I mean, he knew it was an unpopular position, and he knew if he held to it, it could hurt him politically, but he held to it. You don't see this today. There's all the political posturing. There's all the performative action. I mean, you look at what Joe Kent is doing, his flip-flopping, and then the spectacle that is the voting, saving America or saving the integrity of the vote. And you can't be sure the sincere convictions are even there with respect to the Republicans, who know they know this is popular legislation. They want to put it forward. Now they're going to debate it over the next couple of days. But so many of those Republicans probably know they're not going to be able to get any votes from Democrats. And they're not going to do away with the filibuster. I mean, if the Democrats had the opportunity to get its cherished legislation through, they'd do anything. They'd ditch the filibuster in a second. Republicans can't do it, though. They can't. And so they're going to say, hey, we gave it our best shot. We just didn't have the votes. There's just no leadership. There's no courage. Everything's motivated by politics, not convictions, not what's right. I said earlier this week, if there's any action that you think would unite the world around President Trump, it would be going after the number one state sponsor of terrorism. As it is, I mean, our cover in the latest Trumpet magazine is spot on. Instead, the world is uniting against America. And so many forces, even here at home, they're aligned against Donald Trump, fighting Donald Trump. Unity against America. Well, you see how America and Britain dealt with that in the 1940s. And it inspired commentators. Commentators were like, this is brilliant. This is leadership. One man led us to victory. It's a very different world that we see today. The time of Churchill, how did President Trump put it? This is not the age of Churchill. And Melanie Phillips, how did she put it? Why the nation of Churchill is no more. It just doesn't exist, as we've noted. I mean, this war in Iran, it shows how the Brotherhood Alliance is severed. And it also has exposed the weakness of the United Kingdom, of Great Britain. And the truth of it is, it's also exposed the weakness of America. This issue of the trumpet. This is the March issue, tomorrow's news today, the end of NATO. You heard it here first. I mean, yes, that's the most recent issue, but we were talking about the demise of NATO decades ago. It's prophesied. How to besiege the USA. That's another article. And from the infographic on the inside of this issue, you build an anti-American trade coalition. We're seeing that take shape. Mart of Nations and so on. You assemble the world's largest merchant fleet, seize control of the maritime choke points. Well, that's now happened at the Strait of Hormuz. Dump U.S. Treasury bonds. That's happening. Halt exports to the U.S. and Canada, and then let civil war destroy America from within. That's at the infographic in the March issue of the Trumpet magazine. If you look at the Trumpet website, thetrumpet.com, we had an article last night on the battle for Hormuz. And in this article, one of our news gatherers, Abraham Blondeau, he writes about how that, there's some eerie similarities to the Suez Crisis from 1956. I mean, that was just 70 years ago. In this year of anniversaries, let's also remember some of the anniversaries that brought on the demise of the once mighty empire, the British Empire. It says in the Trumpet piece, it talks about the outstanding military successes in the Iran war, the war that President Trump launched together with Israel a few weeks ago. And in the article he says, but these outstanding military successes have not deprived Iran of its most important strategic asset, control of the Strait of Hormuz. It says, when the Islamic Revolutionary Guard announced the closure of Hormuz to all seaborne traffic on March 2nd, the most decisive phase of the Iran war began. As long as Iran controls this vital sea gate, and that's what it is, that's the Bible language that we use, it will threaten the stability of the entire world. As long as it has Hormuz, it has power. As long as Iran has Hormuz, it has power. The stage is being set for the most important struggle for a sea gate in the 21st century. It's a small rogue terrorist state against the world's superpower and most powerful navy. The stakes are high. The loser will suffer a death blow to its prestige and influence, and the outcome could reshape the world. So look at the big picture here. I mean, the stunning array of military capabilities, push-button warfare. It's incredible. But then as it continues on over time, and you see how huge some of these developments are with respect to sea gates and so on, then you begin to look at it a little bit differently. This article at the Trumpet, it says, it's been 70 years since the Suez Crisis of 1956. That was a geopolitical tipping point, signaling the death of an empire. I mean, the empire was really in decline since the end, well, even going into World War II. That was the last hurrah for Britain. When one man led Britain and the Western world to victory. And by 1956, we had the signal of the empire's end, and it revolved around a sea gate. That was a geopolitical tipping point signaling the death of an empire. Will the struggle for Hormuz be another tipping point? Is this another tipping point for the United States? Is this the last hurrah for the mighty military of Manasseh, the United States of America? And will we come to the end of this conflict without control of this vital sea lane, this sea gate? We had in our news stack this morning another guy, Tom Dispatch is his website name, and he's drawing attention to the same history, Suez, saying how similar this looks. It says, by the time, talking about the Suez crisis, by the time the Anglo-French forces came storming ashore at the north end of the Suez Canal, Nasser had executed a geopolitical masterstroke by sinking dozens of rusting ships filled with rocks at the canal's northern entrance. In doing so, he automatically cut off Europe's lifeline to its oil fields in the Persian Gulf. By the time British forces retreated in defeat from Suez, Britain had been sanctioned at the UN. Its currency was at the brink of collapse. Its aura of imperial power had evaporated, and its global empire was heading for extinction. I mean, this is history. This is the history of human civilization. Empires collapse. Empires rot from within. Empires, great empires, are attacked from without. To think that we're too big to fall or fail or to go into extinction I mean, and the times we're living in, look at what God had to do just to save America from being blotted out by the communist infiltration. That's why he brought President Trump back. It says historians now refer to the phenomenon of a dying empire launching a desperate military intervention to recover its fading imperial glory as micro-militarism. And coming in the wake of Imperial Washington's receding influence over the broad Eurasian landmass, the recent U.S. military assault on Iran is starting to look like an American version of just such micro-militarism. I mentioned yesterday on the show the fact that the U.S. just doesn't have the minesweepers that we used to have. And yet you're going to get all kinds of strong statements from President Trump talking about just how overwhelming the victory is. We don't need help. You've heard it already. We don't need help from Europe. I mean, we don't like NATO now because they can't be trusted. I mean, they're not going to rise in defense of America, so what good is this alliance? Well, again, look at the latest issue of the Trumpet magazine, tomorrow's news today, and see what's prophesied. But as to leadership, I mean, there's definitely more strength in Jeroboam, certainly more pro-American positions coming from a Jeroboam administration than there is from Antiochus. But that said, do you think the Jeroboam leadership is going to get up and say, I do not intend to be responsible for any suggestion that the war is won or that it will soon be over? I mean, it's just the opposite today. We won the war and it's going to be over really soon. It has to be, for the sake of cheap energy, the economy, and of course the midterm elections. This article, Tom Dispatch, even if history never truly repeats itself, right now it seems all too appropriate to wonder whether the current U.S. intervention in Iran might indeed be America's version of the Suez Crisis. This is important history. What happens when the age of Churchill is gone? What happens when the British Empire is extinct? Well, that presents quite an opportunity for enemy nations, doesn't it? What happens when the great Royal Navy is exposed as being hollowed out? Finally, it says, just as Egypt snatched a diplomatic victory from the jaws of military defeat in 1956 by shutting the Suez Canal, so Iran has now closed off the Middle East's other critical choke point by firing its Shahed drones at 5 freighters in the Strait of Hormuz and at petroleum refineries on the southern shore of the Persian Gulf. That was in the news this morning. They're not just aiming at oil tankers. Now they're going for the refineries. What happens when they go for pipelines? I mean, we're already seeing a rise in cost for oil, for fuel, for energy. Not Churchill's Britain. That's the Melanie Phillips piece. It's not the same nation that it was under Churchill. And again, America is not the same nation either. There's a sickness that has set in Israelite nations. And this is what Melanie Phillips writes about in her article. She says, as Trump has pointed out, the refusal of Britain, Europe, and others to help defend the straits is egregious. That behavior is disgraceful enough. Far worse is their objection to the war itself. I mean, just the fact that they're not willing to help is one thing, but to stand, opposed to the war effort. It says here, taking refuge behind a perverse denial of the 47-year war waged by Iran against America, Israel, and the West, and to declare falsely that the current war is an illegal act of aggression under international law. as you've seen, if you've been watching the program this week. I mean, this is what European leaders are saying. That it's America who's violating the international rules or laws. They're there, those laws are there, and they apply strictly to America and those Jews. Don't forget the Jews. What does this say about European leadership, about the UK even? I mean, you know what else stands out in that cold open that I played for you? The moral clarity among Western leaders, among even the leading commentators of the day. Japan is going to be reduced to ashes. They have to be. How do you think a statement like that's going to go over at 10 Downing Street or from the White House? The moral clarity today, it's not clear. You see people again testing the political winds every single day, the opinion polls and so on. It says here, and behind that bubbles an unsavory stew of disgust and fear of Trump's moral clarity over Iran, venomous hostility to Israel, founded in the destruction, opposed to Orange Hitler, as she brings out. She says, yes, you read that right. I mean, Trump does have moral clarity when it comes to this menace, this sponsor of terrorism, this murderer of Americans and Brits and Jews in particular. But there's also this venomous hostility to Israel, founded in the destruction of their own moral compass and the disintegration of their sense of national identity and purpose and ability to acknowledge, let alone defend themselves against predatory foes, both from within and without, who need to be fought. There's a sickness from within, a self-hatred, a hatred for Jews that you can't even explain rationally unless you understand that the Bible prophesies of our nations being infiltrated. And it's been a not so slow and steady infiltration these past several decades. Philip says here, Starmer and his party have refused to take part in the heroic, desperate, and courageous attempt finally to rid the world of a very great evil, the Islamic regime of Iran. Starmer and his party, his political party, they're just hoping hostilities die down and that they don't have to comment on it much. And that, Britain's weakness and lack of courageous leadership can be concealed. Melanie Phillips says, if the civilized world is ever to be freed from this lethal constriction that has been relentlessly suffocating the life out of it, the head of the snake must be severed. Well, we were talking about the head of the snake in 2001, right after 9/11. And no Western leader in America or Britain went after the head of the snake until 3 weeks ago. And now he's standing virtually alone. And now the world is lining up against, not the mullahs, against Trump, you see, and the Jews, the dirty Jews. We've got to go after the Jews, and we've got to go after Orange Hitler. It says, Britain, the once lion-hearted nation that under Winston Churchill saved the free world and whose greatest exports have been political freedom, military excellence, and cricket, has turned its back on this vital and desperate endeavor. Thanks, but no thanks, Donald Trump. I mean, not even a congratulation. Not even a pat on the back. They're lining up to denounce Trump, to talk about international law. And there's a lot of people lining up to denounce him right here in America as well. Homegrown hatred for all things Trump and for all things Jews. It's like I said earlier this week, nothing arouses deranged thinking quite like Donald Trump and Jews. At the Telegraph, Melanie Phillips spends a fair bit of time quoting or referring to this piece at the Telegraph. Foreign Office staff attended a party at the Iranian embassy to celebrate the Islamic Revolution just weeks after the regime massacred thousands of its own people as smartly dressed guests, including UK civil servants, gathered at the London event. Embassy officials hailed Iran's remarkable accomplishments in spite of unjust Western sanctions. The Telegraph has some video of these UK civil servants. I mean, these are the elites. These are politicians. And they're celebrating Iran's Islamic Revolution, if you can believe it. This is clip number 8. Moral blindness, not clarity, certainly not. That's going on in Britain. And the day, as the article brings out, the day they were celebrating Iran and its 47-year history since the Islamic Revolution, what was going on in Iran? It says on the same day as the event, February 12th, so this was a few weeks ago, the U.S.-based group Human Rights Activist News Agency announced that at least 7,000 people had been killed in Iran, including 219 children. What is... To me, that seems like it violates some kind of international law. Iran killing 7,000 of its own people, including 219 children. I think some international laws were violated on that day. But you'd never know it looking at the UK civil servants. I mean, they are there dressed smartly. They're there to party. They are there to show their support for the regime. They love Iran. They love the mullahs. They love radical Islam. They love the head of the snake. I guess they love terrorism. Anti-regime campaigners previously said up to 30,000 protesters may have been murdered. Reports had reached the West of injured protesters being killed in hospitals by the regime's feared Islamic Revolutionary Guard, and people on the streets being shot in the head and neck at close range. Demonstrators said the drains of Tehran ran crimson with the blood of the dead. Blood was flowing in Iran when you had those people celebrating at the Iranian embassy. One would wonder if Churchill were the prime minister today, if there would even be an Iranian embassy, let alone a party, a celebration for the Islamic Republic. The age of Churchill is certainly gone. Back in London, it says Iran's ambassador to the UK gave a speech praising the Iranian regime and attacking Western sanctions on Tehran. Which, of course, listen, if you're a radical Islamist in London, in the UK, you can attack the UK. Of course you can. In reading through this morning, I'm thinking about when we lived at Edstone for 6 years. We couldn't send a religious program to the UK for broadcasting if it was made here. They kept rejecting our program, our show. And then finally, when we're over there and we have facilities and we can record it in the UK, they finally, probably reluctantly approved it. But even there, the broadcasting authorities, how many times they rejected this or said, you can't say this, you have to say this. It was unbelievable. And I mean, obviously, I know sometimes a Bible-based message can be strong, But at the same time, it's coming from the Bible. You go in with God's truth and you get more resistance than you do if you're a radical Islamist, Western-hating activist, or British elite, maybe, who hates Britain, who hates the empire, who hates Jews. That officials, this is from Edmund Fitton Brown, that officials thought it appropriate to celebrate the Iranian Islamic Revolution speaks volumes about the strange topsy-turvy morality of the Foreign Office. Well, I should say it does. It's amazing how much the hate flows in the same direction here in America, in the UK. And how do you suppose opening the borders wide to immigrants, illegal immigrants, and in the case of the UK, a lot coming in from, Islamist countries, and more in the US as well. There's another article in our stack talking about how immigrants, when they used to come into America, the melting pot of the world, they would come in and let go of their identity from back home and become part of the melting pot. They would melt right into it. They would love America. They would love what America had to offer. But so many immigrants these days, they don't love America. They hate America. They love the handouts. They love the freebies. And they hate America. And they're not at all, they're not at all trying to hide it. And we, of course, we welcome it. Because we're multicultural, you see? The age of Churchill is certainly over. It certainly is. Israel, it says in this Telegraph piece, Israel is treated with a forensic level of scrutiny that few other states receive, while the behavior of its adversaries is frequently contextualized, rationalized, excused, or ignored. Many British ambassadors end up sounding like their Arab hosts. You could go after Israel all you want. This was when we were over there as well at Edstone. Protests outside of our dance school that our kids went to because they were going to do a fesh in Israel. And a lot of residents in Birmingham didn't like that. Why would you have a dance competition in Israel? Think about people turning out to protest that. A dance competition. You aren't supposed to even go to Israel. There are Jews there. That was the message. Dance competition got canceled. Protesters got what they wanted. Can you imagine a United Kingdom where protesters showed up to say, now, make sure you don't have a dance competition in Iran or Pakistan or, Gaza or somewhere like that? As I say, the hatred, it just flows in one direction. Well, let's say this. It flows in two directions. Two directions primarily. Trump and Jews. There you go. The age of Churchill is certainly over. Islamist ideology rife within civil service, says ex-ambassador. Preeti Patel, a shadow foreign secretary, said, "It's outrageous that the government officials attended an event dedicated to celebrating the barbaric Iranian regime. The same regime was busy slaughtering many thousands of its own citizens just weeks before the event, yet it seems nobody at the Foreign Office thought fit to stop these civil servants from going and paying homage to it." Nobody in the Foreign Office of Great Britain with the moral clarity and the conviction to put a stop to this nonsense, this craziness. Some would say treason. The Foreign Office claimed its presence at the event was a normal part of diplomacy. Oh, we're just reaching out. I mean, this is how you make peace with people, with nations. Diplomacy, dialogue. You talk to anybody. Does that sound familiar? You welcome anybody, except for, Churchill and your noble history. That's to be disfellowshipped, for sure. The war in Gaza caused by Hamas terror attacks on October 7, 2023 has led to a spike in anti-Semitism in the UK, with a 113% rise in hate crimes against Jewish people. A study by YouGov last year found that more than 1 in 5 Britons now hold or agree with anti-Semitic views, the highest level since similar surveys began a decade ago. More and more Jew hatred. More and more anti-Israeli anything. And listen, the infiltration, it's not like it's just happening in the UK. Listen to this from, I think this is a source on social media, clip 4.
In 2017, Zohran Mamdani released a rap track that praised 5 convicted Hamas funders known as the Holy Land Five. Now he wants to run New York. Mamdani says, look him up. So we did. These 5 men were convicted of funneling over $12 million to Hamas, a U.S. designated terrorist organization responsible for the murder, rape, and kidnapping of civilians, including Americans. Mamdani sent his love to convicted Hamas funders. Let that sink in.
Let that sink in. That was made, obviously, before he became New York's mayor. America's, most prestigious city? New York City. And there's Mamdani. He loves him some Hamas. Oh, he does. Loves Hamas. Party with Hamas. This was from Mamdani's inauguration, clip 5.
I, Zohran Kwame Mamdani.
I, Zohran Kwame Mamdani.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the State of New York.
The Constitution of the State of New York.
And the Charter of the City of New York.
And the Charter of the City of New York.
And that I will faithfully discharge the duties.
And that I will faithfully discharge the duties.
Of the office of the Mayor of the City of New York.
Of the office of the Mayor of the City of New York.
According to the best of my ability.
According to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
So help me Quran. That's from the inauguration. Not that many weeks ago. Forget about the Bible. I mean, the Bible, you know what? We're welcoming anything, any religion. We're welcoming Islam. I mean, that's to be celebrated. That's to be praised. But not the Bible, not our history, not Churchill, not our traditions. This is Mamdani. I believe it was after he came in to the office of mayor, clip 6.
Family, to all our city agencies, and me,
That's the New York, sanitation department, led by Mamdani praying to Allah. Here's one from the city hall, clip 7.
Want to make some of that?
A moment where you're asking yourself how you can reconnect to growing up with being taught that
U.S. Senator Tommy Tuberville, he says, Islam is not a religion, it's a cult. Islamists aren't here to assimilate, they're here to conquer Stop worrying about offending the pearl clutchers. We've got to send them home now, or we'll become the United Caliphate of America. Well, that's not a very popular message. That's pretty unusual for Congress. But, you know, when they come in and they say that's what we're intending to do, why aren't there more Churchillian leaders that say, okay, if that's your aim, if that's your goal, then we are going to fight it. We are going to oppose it at every level. We are going to resist it. We're going to expunge it. We're going to remove it. We're going to reduce it to ashes. You're not going to see that today. Not with the sickness and the cancer that has set in Israelite nations. That's been invited in. That's been welcomed. We have put out the welcome mat to all of these ideologies, these mindsets, these philosophies. New York Post says here, children of Iran's regime leaders are educating America's students at colleges from New York to Los Angeles. Iranian leaders call the U.S. the Great Satan and burn effigies of President Trump in the streets, but that doesn't stop them from sending their kids here to learn and to teach. Children of regime leaders and bigwigs are at prestigious universities across the U.S., including the University of Massachusetts, New York's Union College, and George Washington University, the Post can reveal. They're all over the place. And of course, a lot of the demonstrations of support for Hamas, October 7th, the support for Iran, I mean, it's fueled by what's going on university campuses. And you can see by the anti-war sentiment, even among some of the ruling class and the elites. You wonder how much of that is fueled by what we've invited in. It says here, Zahra Damad is the daughter of Ayatollah Mustafa Damad, a prominent Shia cleric who has held various positions within the Iranian government. Zahra is also the niece of Larijani and works as a professor at the Department of Nuclear, Plasma, and Radiological Engineering at the University of Illinois in Champaign. Larijani, I'm not sure if that was it might be the military leader that was taken out by Israel. It says here another gal, Hajarian, the daughter of Saeed Hajarian, one of the co-founders of Iran's Ministry of Intelligence in 1983. He's the assistant professor of biomedical engineering at the University of Massachusetts. How is this not an existential threat to our nations, inviting this kind of thing in, this kind of radicalism, this kind of extremism, or voting it in the case of New York City? And what does it say about New York City residents? What does it say about the people who live there? It gives all kinds of examples in this New York Post article. It says here, in total, there are an estimated 4,000 to 5,000 relatives of prominent Iranian regime leaders and bureaucrats living in the U.S., according to experts and dissidents. 4,000 to 5,000, but, you know, spread them out. What's the big deal? Are there not any commentators or politicians or leaders, besides Tuberville, I gave you his quote, who see this as dangerous? Nobody? Nobody sees this as a sickness? Or a problem even? I guess not. Where is the moral clarity? Judges chapter 2. Just notice what God instructed Israel anciently, and he did this. Obviously, God's purpose and plan is that everyone might be called to salvation in a time order. The traditional denominations of Christianity don't understand this. They say that Jesus came on a soul-saving crusade. He tried to save everyone that he could before it was too late. The vast majority of human beings that have ever lived on this earth have never known God or his laws or his purpose, his plan. But they'll get an opportunity in the second resurrection. They'll get an opportunity when Jesus Christ returns to this earth with God's family government. So in ancient Israel, God said to the Israelites, and the reason he did this is because spiritual Israel has to be separate from the evil influences of this world. We have to come out of this world. And in the case of ancient Israel, they had to be separated physically. So God said this in Judges 2. Verse 1, and an angel of the Eternal came up from Gilgal to Bochim and said, I made you go up out of Egypt. So God intervened to bring them out of Egyptian slavery. And I brought you to the land unto which I swore unto your fathers. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. And I said, I will never break my covenant with you, and you shall make no league with the inhabitants of the land, and you shall throw down their altars. But you have not obeyed my voice. Why have you done this, God says? Wherefore I also said, I will not drive them out from before you, but they shall be as thorns in your sides, and their gods shall be a snare unto you. God said, if you don't get rid of these altars, if you don't sever these leagues or these alliances that you've made with these foreign influences, it's going to be a thorn in your side. It's going to be a sickness. It's going to be a snare. And well, look at the history. Look at the history. In 1 Corinthians 15, verse 33, I gave you this verse a few weeks ago. Paul said, don't be deceived. Bad company ruins good morals. I mean, the morals are already in the cesspool. We have no moral clarity as it is. So what do you do when you just invite the enemy in? Those that hate you, come on in by the thousands. Hey, maybe you can even have a job at one of our prestigious universities. Or maybe be the mayor of New York City. How about that? What would Churchill have done or said? If Winston Churchill had witnessed any of these, the New York Post story that I gave to you, what was in the Telegraph, Melanie Phillips' article, the big celebration for the Islamic Republic, what would Winston Churchill say? What position would Churchill have? What was it we had in the cold open? It was President Trump saying, this is not the age of Churchill. It certainly isn't. This is the age of danger, of peril. This is the age of sickness and disease. This is the age of sin. Our nations are just drenched in sin, in rebellion, in witchcraft, in leagues with foreign nations, foreign influences. We have, far from keeping ourselves separate from the world and the ways of this world, we're inviting it in. We saw it happen in spiritual Israel. As soon as Herbert Armstrong died, the church that God established through him just invited the world in. They didn't want to be separate. They wanted alliances and leagues with all these foreign influences in a spiritual sense. And look at what it did to spiritual Israel. It destroyed the worldwide church of God. And that's what it's doing to our nations. And you see, in the case of hatred for Jews, that certainly is it's becoming a stronger storyline in a lot of the commentary and podcasting right here in America, and a lot of the resistance even to going after the number one state sponsor of terrorism And if I have time tomorrow, I'll finally get around to that. It's been in my notes for a couple of days, but we certainly made or covered a lot of ground on today's show. But we're out of time. It's the fastest moving hour in broadcasting. You're listening to Stephen Flurry, and this is the Trumpet Daily. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you tomorrow.